I do want to see negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. They've come together over grain supplies. They've come together over other issues. They can do so again. But I do not believe that the idea of a coalition of the willing taking part in NATO operations in support of Ukraine is actually the way forward at all. All it will do is encourage Russia to up the ante on its side and bring in even more troops and more forces and drag in weapons from India and China, as NATO will drag in weapons from all over the West. We're setting up for a major and very, very dangerous confrontation with nuclear weapons on both sides. So far, the United Nations has either been incapable or unwilling of bringing about a ceasefire. The late Pope Francis tried very hard, the African Union tried very hard, President Lula tried very hard, and others. I think what we need is a global intervention, a diplomatic global intervention, to get a ceasefire, to get a pullback on both sides, so that the people of Ukraine and of the border area of Russia can live in peace. The future of a war in Europe is appalling, and so let's work on that. And the British role in this has not been a good one. In April 23, when there was a real possibility of a ceasefire, Boris Johnson intervened to make sure there wasn't one. And Boris Johnson's involvement was wholly to encourage Ukraine not to come to an agreement with Russia at that stage, but to continue the war. And he promised an unlimited supply of British weapons. I hate the war, I hate the killing, and I hate the rhetoric and the language that goes with it. I want to see peace there. The people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, are not going to achieve anything if this war carries on. It has to stop. The fighting has to stop. The killing has to stop. And there has to be an agreement. It can be done, but it's got to be done very quickly. We launched Your Party because I think the people of this country need to have the opportunity of supporting and working with an alternative to the three main parties in Parliament, all of whom essentially follow the same economic agenda, the same social agenda, and equally importantly, the same international agenda. And so I think there's a need for an alternative. So we decided to launch Your Party, set around the principles of social justice in this country, public ownership of major services and utilities, adherence to net zero targets by 2030, a society based on equality and human rights, and crucially, an international strategy that's dedicated towards peace, not war, and support for the people of Palestine, as well as reining in the arms trade and the arms industries around the world. In this country, Nigel Farage and the far right are quite powerful. They're even more powerful in France and Spain, Germany, Italy, Austria, all over Europe. And that's because too many political forces on the centre left concede ground to the far right. We are not conceding any ground to them whatsoever. We have to deal with the issues of poverty, of bad housing, of underfunding. You deal with that by tackling inequalities in society. You don't deal with that by joining in the routine abuse of refugees and asylum seekers. We're not going to do that. The Labour vote was 34% at the last general election, which was a very low percentage for a winning party. And in terms of actual votes cast, even less than Labour achieved under my leadership in 2019. Labour support has now slumped, according to the latest opinion poll, to less than half that figure. It's now at 16%. And it looks to me like it's going to be going down further. So I don't think there's any danger of splitting the Labour vote. I think when we are campaigning and in operation, there will be an even bigger fall in the Labour vote towards us. Well, the mainstream media will always attack anyone that proposes any radical alternative. I've been personally attacked for many years by the mainstream media, and in particular during my time as leader of the Labour Party, when the most disgusting, disgraceful and foul allegations were made against me. And we carried on. We carried on with our public meetings, our rallies and our social media message. And to some extent, You can bypass the bile of the right-wing media by direct appeal to people, but only to some extent. It's also about the direct contact one can have by rallies and meetings, and I spend a lot of time doing public meetings and rallies. I'm not saying we're going to win everything just by public meetings, but we do that by a consistent message and the use of alternative media, the use of social media, and not allowing the right-wing papers, particularly the Murdoch Press and the Daily Mail, to set the political agenda in our society. They've gone complaining about refugees and boat people for years, even though there's actually a very small number of them. They've complained about them for years. How surprising that now some opinion polls show immigration to be the biggest issue facing British people. It's not. The biggest issue facing British people is inequality in our society, and that is the agenda we're going to be pushing.